Hello, CSL. Welcome back to yet another episode of the off season. We're back today with a special episode, really. Not here to talk about free agency or the antics of teams and signings and all that kind of crazy antics that have kind of occurred over throughout this off season. We're not here to talk about Adrian Peterson, who just signed for the Buffalo Bills. I'm actually today am joined by a very special guest, the commissioner of the CSFL. Rizzo, it's great to finally get you onto an episode. You had some duties last week you had to drop out for, but it's good to have you on the show today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be able to join. I'm kind of upset it's taken me this long, but listening to you and Josh throughout the season has been a great listen, and I'm glad I can hop on here this week.
Yeah, it's great to get you on sort of in the off season to, as I was sort of saying before we came on, to kind of give a view of the landscape of the CSFL and, going from what was an idea in your head from probably the middle of this year to actually seeing the first season be completed now. And we'll probably talk about a little about that later on when we can get to like the commissioner's corner, as I've called it, as a second piece to talk about today. But I think the first thing I wanted to talk to you about really was to get your view on the draft class and how that was created, how you came up with the names, because some of the new GMs who probably have joined in the off season have looked at the class and have probably noticed, rightfully so, that not all of the players who are in this draft class were actually in the original 2011 NFL draft class. So I wanted to just sort of pick your brain in terms of how you got the names, and there's some guys from the 2011, 2012, and there's some other different names in there as well that people might not have been associated with actually being drafted into the NFL.
Yeah, so what we did with the CSFL is we pretty much have taken the draft system from our basketball league, the CSL, which I'm a member of the draft team over there. So what they do is they make their own custom classes. So we're using real life players and names. They may not be created exactly as they are in real life with the same attributes, but similar abilities. And we try to custom make the class so that they're not exact players every year. So like you said, that this is not the 2011 NFL draft. So what we did is we went ahead and we took the 2011, 2012, and 2013 NFL drafts, pretty much threw all of the players into one large pool. And then we added in all of the undrafted free agents that made it into the NFL. And we basically just kind of broke them up into enough players to create an entire class, hopefully having some stronger classes, some weaker classes. Maybe this one is quarterback heavy, where next year we might see a ton of top tier wide receivers. That comes with more of the randomization process. But as far as the names go, we're looking at about 3 NFL drafts, or two to three NFL draft worths of names split up into 3 to 4 CSFL draft classes.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I guess one of the challenges you have as a sim league, you obviously go at a faster pace to the real life NFL. So, you've got players who, will be drafted every season, but in CSFL terms, I mean, we'll probably go through, I'm guessing, through a yearly cycle of 3 seasons, possibly each year, 3 to 4 seasons. So I guess it's kind of a balancing act of having the players in there, but having it sort of spread out enough so that you can make up the various draft classes. I just wanted to pick your brains really on a couple of things you said, actually, Rizzo. So the first one you mentioned obviously was undrafted players from the NFL around this time. Would you mind just sort of elaborating a little bit more on sort of the process for that?
Sure. There are definitely a few undrafted players from the 2011 NFL draft class, let's say. Didn't get drafted in the league, but they have certainly made a name for themselves in an NFL career, and they tend to be household names. I believe one of the players in this draft is wide receiver Cole Beasley. He's still playing right now for the Buffalo Bills. Pretty good player, but he went undrafted. So if we had just used the historical mod from the Wolverine Studios forums, he would not have been part of the league because he was undrafted, and it's really only the drafted players that get added into the league since we started in 2010. So he was one of the many players that went undrafted in the NFL, but he's definitely going to end up being drafted in the CSFL because we know that he's a more talented player than what NFL GMs believed back in his draft class. So he's one of the few that we'll see that they were undrafted in the NFL, but are definitely going to be an impact player in the CSFL at some point.
Yeah, so kind of the players who were overlooked during that period, but ended up obviously fighting their way into the league and becoming, solid players. I mean, Cole Beasley's a good one you've mentioned there because, as you said, he's still playing now. What's that? 8 years on. So there's obviously players like that who went undrafted, got into a team, and obviously have stayed in the actual NFL for many years. So it's great that we can also include them in the various drafts as we end each CSFL season.
Yeah, I guess we have a luxury as sim general managers that we get to see ratings and not just watching players in real life. Much easier for us to pour over numbers than to break down a player's game based on different competition levels and college statistics that might not mean much. So I guess we have it a lot easier than some of the NFL GMs do.
Yeah, we can just look at a couple of key ratings like speed, agility, and hands for a wide receiver and go, he'll be a fairly good slot receiver, or they don't have that capability, unfortunately. But
no, not that easy.
No, it's not quite that easy in real life, is it? But the other point I wanted to sort of ask you a little bit about was the point you made at the beginning, where you obviously said that looking at this, the CSL basketball league, obviously being a draft rookie head there, and then sort of bringing that over where we have real life players, but they might not necessarily perform the same as their real life counterparts, but they'll have the same sort of skills. Is this a case of, for example, let's say, the obvious one here is Cam Newton. Let's be honest, he'd probably go number one. I could see Kyrus taking him definitely, but just in terms of him, so he's probably quite a good one to talk about, really, in terms of ratings and his ability. Are we going to see a Cam Newton that is the same style as the NFL? We got someone who's slightly different. I think that would give a good flavour to GMs who are looking at scouting and looking at, do they look at a player they know, or because he's going to perform like that, or do they need to go and scout him?
Sure. Yeah, let's talk about that quickly. So we definitely didn't want to go through and customize ratings for all of the draft class. I mean, we're looking at 250 plus names here. So with quarterbacks, it's a little different because they do have in the database, there is what they call a flag, basically a checkbox for running quarterback. So for instance, Cam Newton in this draft class is considered a running quarterback. You want those mobile guys to use their legs in the sim engine. So we have to go through and tailor that Cam Newton to be a running quarterback. They don't have that option for other positions. It's just quarterback at this point. So with the quarterbacks, I think we all spent a little bit more time making sure that we're going to see players that play to their strengths. So for instance, anybody who watched college football back in this era, Ja'Cory Harris played at the University of Miami. Super raw quarterback, skinny, mobile, not the best pocket passer, but he definitely had the wheels to move around. So we had to make sure that he was also flagged as a running quarterback. And there's a couple others in the class. So to the point of Cam Newton playing as a mobile quarterback, yes, we were able to tailor certain aspects of his game to make sure he will utilize his running capabilities. But as far as customizing his actual ratings, I think that's something you could speak about more along the lines of what we did for this class using the NFL mod we found from Wolverine Studios.
Yeah, so okay, we could talk about that. So as you mentioned, obviously, in terms of some of the players like Cam Newton, you can tweak the database for the style of play. They are quarterbacks, as you've mentioned. For the others, what we essentially did is took the NFL mod that was on the Wolverine Studios forum, and we, like we did when we started this league, we ran a lot of testing on the draft class in particular for these from 2011 to 2013, as you said, Rizzo. And from that, we basically used a couple of different moderations to it to basically pull out average ratings for that. So the way the draft classes work in the engine is you input the draft class into the engine, you run the mod through. Each time you would create this run this mod as a whole new save, it would create slightly different ratings for each player. And we basically ran through multiple versions of that and then used that to sort for that. We didn't do it obviously for every single player, but we looked at ratings as a piece in terms of, the averages and max and mins for each and the quartiles to make sure it kind of mapped up with our actual league itself. So I think that's the positive thing to take from this, Rizzo, isn't it? That we've done a lot of testing on this, but we've done a lot of testing between us three where we don't actually know the ratings of the players in our actual league. So the way we've uploaded it's all basically blind, isn't it? So I think that's the positive. Obviously, we've got a couple of players from each sort of position or something where we've looked at them in a little bit more detail to make sure that they would function as you said, as how they should. But I guess that's the good thing, is that we're going into this scouting period and this draft period not really knowing how everyone's going to sort of position out.
So the scouting really does come into effect here. With the basketball draft class, out of 60 players, I'm creating 30 of them. So I personally know 30 different players that I've created. I still do the scouting, but it's tough not to remember what kind of player you've made. Like you said, here we're doing a lot of randomization, especially running so many tests, hours and hours of tests. It's impossible for us to know who has what ratings. Of course, there are a couple of elite players that we made sure to tailor make to kind of headline the class a little bit, like Cam Newton that we've already talked about. But I'm excited to get to scouting because I haven't played any of the single player franchises deep enough to really master scouting. So I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of draft busts and sleepers that we find in the class this year, depending on the 30 different GMs we have.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, just to see how it all kind of pans out, really. Because as you said, rightly said, there's with the CSL draft, sorry, when you're essentially creating 30 players from scratch in that league, whereas this one is a slightly different methodology because there's so many players, and we're trying to make it as as fair as possible in that we don't see players' ratings. We just look at some of the headline guys that you kind of said. So I'm looking forward to doing the scouting just to see, like, oh, okay, I have an idea of the players' names as everyone kind of does in this class, but I don't necessarily know whether they're going to be good or not, or whether they're the right kind of thing. So I'm really looking forward to this draft and this class, and hopefully it's a good basis for us for the future classes as well, because as you said, Rizzo, at the beginning, because we've gone from 2011 to 2013, the other classes are kind of already in a position where not necessarily we can we know the names straight away. We don't know the names at this point, but we have all of the ratings sort of hidden secretly now, so we can just literally pull them off and run, the next draft class. So the workload for us is a little bit more manageable, which is good for us, I guess.
Oh yeah,
we haven't got through the hours of testing again, Rizzo. That's the positive.
You don't want to do that again. Yeah, so having a system working in our favor, just saves us so much time.
Yeah.
But like you said, I'm looking forward to this draft class. I look forward to the day where that no-name quarterback that never made it in the NFL, through randomization with the NFL mod, comes into the CSFL and turns into like a superstar. That'll be the day that, because all the sim leagues have those superstars that never made it in real life. So I'm waiting for that franchise quarterback to come out of nowhere, and that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe Mariota will be better in the CSFL than in real life as he's been this season. So
can't take too much to be much better than what he is in real life. So
no. Okay, we've talked a little about the draft, and I know there's some other bits we want to kind of cover today. So we'll move on to sort of the commissioner's corner, as I've called it, and this is going to be your chance, Rizzo, I think, at the end of every season to do a bit of a reflective piece and perhaps update the league with thinking of what might be going on, what things that could look forward to, what things are kind of under initial investigation, I guess. But before we talk about some of those hypothetical things that are possibly seasons away, I just want to get your views on the first season of the CSFL. So you had the idea of creating a pro football league based on the historic position of 2010, 2011. And how do you think it's gone so far? What have been the highlights for you, and what have been the things that you looking back, perhaps we need to develop going forward?
Well, like you said, it's probably been about 6 months since we all came up with the idea. You're giving me way too much credit, because I know that behind the scenes, yourself and Dylan have done a ton of the work with me as well, especially the beginning stages of getting it set up, getting the server running, getting the league file prepared. It was just so much work, and it's only been one season, but it feels like we already have a nice history going as the CSFL. So I think one season in, there were a lot of kinks that we had to work through. Definitely has been a fun season. Didn't end as well as I would have liked it to have, but I'm sure the party in New Orleans is still going. But overall, I think a first season, in any sim league, you're going to see a ton of GM turnover, just because, we're trying to figure out who's the best GMs for our league, and they're trying to figure out if this league is best for them as well. So I know we had seen a comment on the forum saying, is this a natural kind of GM turnover for this league? And I think early on, turnover is good. We want to make sure that we're getting a good core of general managers in the league, and I think at this point we do, as we've seen in the activity just in the free agency. A lot of teams don't have that cap space to be spending, but we still have upwards of 24, 25 different teams exporting on a regular basis. So that's a great sign for the league going forward.
Yeah, and I think that's the best bit for me as well, is when you started to put stuff together, and of course at the beginning there was a couple of kinks in terms of how we ran the files and things, because it's a new game and new software that we've not necessarily used for an online league before. And I guess that's the positive, is that when you get to free agency now and you see over 3/4 of the league pretty much loading files in for free agency, when some teams have loads of caps, some teams don't. That's just a real positive, which to me, that's what makes the draft really exciting, because the first 3 rounds are obviously going to be forum based. So we're going to see hopefully some really good activity with GMs, whether it's, I know myself, you, Rizzo, and Dylan, we're not allowed to trade in the draft, but I'm looking forward to seeing some of these draft day trades that I think are going to happen, because there's so many active GMs and everyone's looking at it and will have done some scouting, and that's the positive thing, is when you see the activity and you see the community building. I think that's the positive to take away, definitely, from this first season.
Yeah, the activity is definitely a positive. And like you say, we just talked about the draft for about 15 minutes, and that's really just a tease at this point because none of us have been able to dive into scouting. All we know are how much are we going to be paying our players at each draft spot and who's drafting where and what players are in the draft, but we don't know anything about these guys yet. So I think once Sunday's simulation runs and we all get our scouting reports, once the draft window unofficially opens and Kyra selects Cam Newton first overall, then I can't imagine how many trades are going to be pulled off, early and often.
Yeah, I can't wait.
There's going to be GMs working the phone lines on Christmas Eve trying to make that deal before they make a pick. It's going to get crazy, but like you said, unfortunately, we'll sit back and watch the fireworks. Just to make sure everything's on the up and up and fair for the draft. But it's going to be a lot of fun to have 3 rounds of GM activity.
Yeah, and trading over that Christmas turkey. I can't think of anything else that'd be more stressful. After you've had a few, you're eating that turkey, and you're thinking you might get that number 3, number 4 pick, or you might get a shot at JJ Watt or someone like that. And my goodness me, that could be crazy.
The wives will be very, very happy.
Yeah, I'm sure the family are going to love you for that one.
For sure.
So, moving away from the season itself, and the other bit that I want to talk about in sort of this commish corner section, really, before you go off, really, is thinking about the league going forward. Obviously we've got the base now for how the seasons are going to run. The rough, the rough sort of figures and trade and collective bargain agreement is all in place. So the core of the league is sort of sitting there now and can kind of run forward. Looking forward, more forward ahead into the future, what other things are you thinking about developing with the CSFL? What are things you've got on your mind at the moment that you want to sort of add to the league to either make it more enticing to GMs or to make it more, improve the community further? What sort of things are sort of sitting there at the moment you're kind of toying with?
Yeah, so I've got 3 things that I've been thinking about, and like you said, having the league run for 1 year, and now we have a good baseline of what we're doing. I think it is time for us to start thinking of what else is it possible to implement without overworking ourselves as admin. I think the first one is looking at potentially doing live sims, at least for the playoffs and maybe even like the last week of the regular season. Really taking a focus in on some of the big time matchups that'll determine some of the playoff seedings going in, week 16 and week 17. And then maybe picking a game of the week or the game of the round for the playoffs and especially the Super Bowl. I think to be able to get that as a live sim, get some GMs to watch it, and then even use it on our Twitter feed to even help advertise for more GMs to join us would be a great way to market the league to the rest of the simulation world, basically.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on this one. So we obviously this year we tried to do a sort of a live Super Bowl sim with Rouse, the eventual champion. Unfortunately, we couldn't get it live due to some computer issues that we were having, but we managed to get it sort of. So we had the discussion there, and then had the reaction after the Super Bowl result itself, which I think went down pretty well with the GMs in the league. I think from the discussion. So yeah, I think I completely agree. Live sims for the playoffs, and possibly that key matchup going into the seedings for the playoffs, would be fantastic. I think, and it'd be even better if we could get the GMs on who, are involved in those matchups as well to talk about what they're doing and their strategy. Because they'll obviously have exported into the file already. So that would be fantastic.
Yeah, that would have been a lot of fun to be on with you and Rouse during the Super Bowl and just having like instant feedback from both coaches to cursing out my virtual players for not scoring for 3/4 of the game. So that would have been fun.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's definitely something we can achieve. Hopefully this season. We'll have a look at it. Hopefully this season would be great.
For sure. And I think that kind of segues into my next point. Trying to use that live sim as a marketing ploy to get interest from other people who aren't in the league yet. I know we still have the Pittsburgh Steelers still open and available, but I do believe in the very near future we'll have a full league. So this hasn't been anything I've discussed with you guys yet, but I know it's something that we kind of explore in the basketball league with assistant GMs. I was thinking that in time to keep people active and waiting for their own franchise to open, starting like an offensive or defensive coordinator position with teams. Like I know personally with my Patriots this season, I haven't even opened up the defensive playbooks yet. But if there was somebody, if the league were full and someone wanted to join on as a defensive coordinator and really take over that half of the ball for me, I definitely would have signed up to have somebody be an assistant GM as my defensive coordinator, go in and tinker with the playbook, my depth charts and stuff like that for the defensive players. So I think as we get full and we still get interest from outside GMs, starting an offensive or defensive coordinator, basically system to keep them involved with the league is something that we could look at going forward. Almost like a wait list, but you're still part of the league and playing a crucial role for a specific franchise.
Yeah, and it's a great idea, and I think if the league is full and active and people are waiting around, that's not a good thing. So to get them involved is certainly a great positive. I mean, I can imagine now that you can have teams, fighting over defensive and offensive coordinators because they know they've got a decent playbook or they know about the game. I mean, that would be madness, really. I could certainly see as the league feels that could be a great advertising point that we could people who are waiting can come in. And but also I think one point you could probably say over that as well is if we have a full league and we have people who are interested and want to go into these coordinator roles, if they're not necessarily familiar with the engine as well, it's probably quite a good little intro for them as well, because they'll focus on obviously the defense or offense or both possibly, but then they'll get a view of what schemes work, what stuff doesn't work, and players who are good, not good. So it kind of builds up that skill set for when they do get a GM role, if it is full, they can go straight in and they're confident and capable of handling that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they wouldn't even have to worry about financials or maybe even making trades. They just need to focus on their side of the ball and getting the best results. But yeah, as we're talking about draft, I can imagine if I'm sitting here with Tom Brady in his last few years and I'm looking to maximize the offensive side of the ball. If I've brought on a GM as a defensive coordinator, he's probably staring at some of the top defensive players saying, yeah, get me another linebacker or get me a defensive end. And I'm dying to add another wide receiver. It'd be great to see what some of those conversations behind closed doors look like for some of these franchises. So it's an interesting thought. But I think the point that you brought up is instead of having a wait list and GMs just sitting around doing nothing, getting them involved in the league is probably best for everyone involved.
Yeah, and I think just very quickly, I think is it the Raiders GM who has his friend helping him out, I believe.
Yeah, I think I do remember seeing that.
I remember him mentioning it, that we had to give his friend access to the password and possibly to the forum as well, because I think he was just going to come in and purely help him on, game plan. So
yeah, and that was probably one of the kinks we'd have to work out with that whole system is having one export for each team. It's not possible to have two guys working on the same file, so it might have to be a system where they have to send an export file or figure something out. But like we said, it's something that we're going to kind of think about in the background. And if we reach the point where we do have a wait list and you want to get extra GMs involved, then that's something we'll have to really think about in the background.
Yeah, interesting thought, and hopefully we'll get to that position. We'll have a nice full league, all active, and be a great challenge to have, won't it? So I know you mentioned you had three things. What was the third thing that you had on your list?
So the last one, and I don't know how much of a secret it is as I've been posting this, but I'm thinking about running a college football league that goes along with our pro league. Like you said, that we're trying to use as many real life draft classes as possible. But at some point, because we're running 3 seasons for every 1 calendar year or something about that, we're going to hit a point where we are going to surpass where the NFL draft is. I think we've already game planned it out. It's not going to happen until about 2025 or 26, something around that. So we're going to try to use as many undrafted players as possible. We're going to use as many, obviously, all of the drafted players we're going to use. But at some point, we're going to run into where we're going to have to get into the fictional world of players. Maybe 1 class here, 1 class there, just to kind of supplement our universe and allow the NFL draft to reload for us to add players. I know there's been some interest for a few GMs on the forums. Obviously, with the college football league, there's no trading, there's no salaries, there's no draft. All of the recruiting is done through the game. We can simulate at the same pace as the pro league, or maybe even faster to catch up year-wise. But I think it's a low maintenance kind of a league that will also go towards supplementing our league with draft classes going into the future. So it would be nice to have a little background on all of the players, their success in college and stuff like that. So I think it's something that, as long as we can get it all set up, or it's something that I'm looking to run, so I can spearhead all of the work on that. If we have interest, I'd love to open it up publicly to let people join in the college league. So even if there are no positions for the pros, you can still be a part of the CSFL through the college ranks.
Yeah. And as you said, it's good timing, because I think the DDSCF, I think it's called, College Football 20, is coming out in beta soon, I think, or
Yes.
There's some announcement coming out this week, I believe, which I think we've advertised on the Twitter feed that we've got. It'd be interesting to see, and as you kind of said, it'll probably be a longer term thing as we kind of start to run out with players in several years' time. Basically, it's something that will, be good to have a pile of possible draftees that we could, mix in, or have a whole draft class, or, because at the moment, as you said, we've got 2011, 2012, 2013 sort of mixed in with undrafted players. It might be that in the future we have a proportion of a future NFL draft class with undrafted players, and with some of these sort of fantasy players from our actual CSFL league. I can see that being quite a nice little mix, because there'll still be some real players in there, some undrafted guys, and also some sort of fake players. So you can kind of do a little bit of scouting in the actual college football league that we possibly could have, but people will still have the real players, which is I think the real unique selling point for our league as well.
For sure, yeah, we'd like to keep the real players going as long as possible. And like you said, if we have to spread them out a little bit more, because we already have 270, 280 players in a draft class. If the top 150 are all real players, and then we supplement with some of the college football players from our league, goes a long way. And I know in the basketball league we are both a part of, we do write draft articles, and it's easier as a draft creator, since I did create the players. I know a lot about them, and so I can write articles about them. Having that college football league in the background, we could always post stats, big games from certain players, and kind of get people interested into knowing some of the fictional players that could be entering the CSFL. So it would be a nice way to have some scouting for our league to keep people updated on the draft as the season goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, we've got the CSL online scouting tool now as well, which is, I'm sure, something you're thinking about as well, alongside sort of the scouting in game, and possibly the college football league as well, in terms of longer term things to possibly bring into the CSFL.
Yeah, if I could duplicate that web app from basketball to a football league, it's definitely something that would be interesting to use here. Because like you said, we could actually start doing full season scouting once we get that up and running. So instead of having to wait to just this one period before the draft, we could see some scouting reports to get an idea on what kind of players we're looking at this year.
Yeah. No, some interesting ideas to take forward, I guess. If there's, in terms of thinking about the season itself, are you kind of happy with the progress the CSFL has made and the direction and journey that it's on?
I'm definitely pleased with what we've seen so far in this first year. I have to imagine there's got to be some statistic out there where 95% of sim leagues for multiplayer don't make it past the first season. So I think we're already in the upper echelon of leagues just because we have a great core of GMs. We have a good baseline that we know, a good schedule that we're following. Everything's run on time. We haven't had many scheduling conflicts. So I think with all of that set up for us, we're not really looking at a potential of failure down the road. And like we've already discussed, there are different things that we're looking to implement that can only make the league better. So I think we're off to a great start. And I think it's just going to continue to get better as the community grows for the CSFL.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I guess before we finish off, is there anything you want to say to the GMs who are hopefully listening into this and looking at the off season?
I just want to thank them for their effort and their activity so far. Like we said, touching upon it, free agency sims have been great. And I mean, the drafts being on the forums for the first 3 rounds is going to be exciting. I know there's going to be a ton of commentary on these picks, and I'm looking forward to seeing what people think, because listening to you and Josh on the podcast, you guys bring up aspects of players and personality ratings and game plans that I had never even thought about. I was lucky to inherit a team like the Patriots. It's kind of just throw the ball out there and let them go to work most of the time. Unfortunately, it didn't work out in the end. But I think that's because I lost to a better coach and a better GM. So having these podcasts and having those trade commentaries and the draft commentary and hearing what 25, 28, 30 different GMs have to think about specific players, it's always good to get all that different feedback from how people view different things.
Great. Rizzo, thanks for coming on. It's been great to get your views of the CSFL so far, and hopefully the first of many seasons.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And I look forward to continuing the off season and getting on to season 2, because I think we're all excited, but we also want to get back to football really soon. So everyone stay active. Thank you, Chris, for having me on, and continue your great work on the podcast.